Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. I've got Denver Riggleman with me today, former congressman from Virginia and technical advisor to the January 6th committee. I often introduce guests as my good friend, and it's never not true. But Denver and I have been through some shit together, including running a convoy across the Polish border into Ukraine. And buddy, I never imagined we would be spending an anniversary of an attack on our capital, contemplating the inevitable pardons of those insurrectionists, and not just their pardons, but their elevation as patriots. As someone who probably did more than anybody, certainly anybody I know, to preserve for posterity what actually happened that day, how are you processing this?
That is a question a few people have asked me, Ken. Coming from you, it's a little bit different, right? It hits a little bit different based on what we've been through together. And gobsmacked isn't even the word. It doesn't even reach the level of where I'm at. And I think the way that I put it when Trump won not only the electoral vote, but the popular vote, was I felt like a stranger in my own country. It's almost as if I'm watching some alternate reality from behind a screen, saying, is that what it would be like if disinformation and fantasy took over an entire sort of network of individuals or a political party? Is that what that looks like? That's impossible. And somebody said, well, what about, the sacking of the Capitol? Every single person that day who went into the Capitol, Ken, every single person involved, every single person who supports those individuals believes in QAnon conspiracy theories. And so now it gets to a point with what I've done with the initial report I sent to Liz 3 days after January 6th. I don't know if you know about that one, for the impeachment, where we identified 7 white nationalist organizations involved, all the way to the committee itself. I'm having a tough time defining my feelings, like gobsmacked, stranger in my own country. What's happening to America? We actually voted for this. Now we know where we're at. All those things seem to, it's like a fur ball of crazy that I'm trying to fight, and trying to unravel, and I just can't do it.
This idea that we actually voted for this, I feel obliged to push back, not because I disagree, but because it's sort of in my patriotic DNA to say, no, this isn't the America I wore the uniform for, that you wore the uniform for. So I look for evidence wherever I can find it that our better angels will prevail. And one of those bits of evidence is the FAFO effect, right? The F around find out effect, and how so many Trump voters are now having second thoughts about sending this guy back to the White House, that suggests that maybe they didn't vote for him because they thought he was going to deport their aunt, right? Maybe they didn't vote for him because they thought he was actually going to follow through with punishing tariffs that are going to hurt everyday Americans, that it was just a reaction to overall malaise and economic conditions or whatever, lies about the Democratic Party, and that we have an information problem as a country, less than a character problem as a country.
Well, I think I love that you said the FAFO portion of that. It's so true, but I can't remember who said it. There was a quote, right, that more or less said, "You get what you vote for, and you get it hard." I think that's what some of these individuals are looking at. I get you. I just don't know, after 9 years of knowing this individual, that he's still got almost 80 million votes. I think that's the thing that I'm having a tough time with. And when I look at the media, when I look at our own, I would say our own legal system, our law enforcement, sort of the layers that we have to go through to hold people accountable, there just seems to be so many failures in the fourth estate, the media, and the legal portion of this, and law enforcement, the ability to hold people accountable, the ability for Democrats to even message in any way that's effective. I mean, it was stunning. I was the Republicans for Harris, but nobody cared what we were like. No, the other thing too, and it's something that scares me. Nobody cared that we said, listen, January 6th is so freaking important to actually campaign on, but most people don't care anymore. There's a majority of Americans, especially in the GOP side, that doesn't even ring a bell with them, and even independent voters. And I think that's where I'm, again, still gobsmacked For me, January 6th is what shaped me starting a new company. It's what shaped me wanting to be somebody who always talked facts and truth. I was already like that, but it almost radicalized me into this reasonableness and this rationality. So I'm a radicalized into rationality and facts-based and data-based types of analysis. And I mean, that's the thing, buddy. You're right. FAFO's coming, but it doesn't change the fact that I look around and I'm like, how could you vote for somebody who was found liable for sexual abuse? How could you vote for somebody who's a felon? How is it evangelical or a Christian you could vote for somebody who paid off Playboy bunnies and porn stars? How could you vote for somebody who ran a nefarious private university? How can you, that had an accountant or somebody who worked for him and went to jail? How do you vote for somebody like this? I can't wrap my arm around it. But then when you go to that media ecosystem, you talked about informational. That was a long way of answering your question, Ken. And sorry about that. But when you go back to that, there is actually an ecosystem we can't seem to get our arms around or fight back against when it's only the deep state and the globalists that perpetrated all this, which is so ludicrous to anybody who's been radicalized into rationality that you have a tough time explaining it away.
Is that a new phrase? Because I'm going to steal it if either way, radicalized.
I just made it up. Yeah, it is. It is. It's a Denver Riggleman original. It's a Denverism, as people say. And but it is true. If I thought I was facts-based before, after seeing the January 6th data, I cannot suffer anybody who thinks, it's hard for me to suffer any argument about anything outside of what I saw in the data.
As a person who exists publicly, especially as someone who shares my opinions online, I am hyper aware of safety and security. And unfortunately, it is easier than ever to find personal information about people online. All this data hanging out on the internet can have actual consequences in the real world. The fact is, you can't always control whether you are a target, but you can make it harder for politically motivated actors to escalate threats by taking a proactive approach to the security of your personal information. That is why I personally recommend Delete Me. Delete Me is a subscription service that removes your personal info from hundreds of data brokers. Delete Me sends you regular personalized privacy reports showing what info they found, where they found it, and what they removed. Delete Me isn't just a one-time service. Delete Me is always working for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want on the internet. To put it simply, Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping your and your family's personal information from data broker websites. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting Ken to 64000. Text Ken to 64000. That's KEN to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. It's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break here to let you know that we'd love to hear from you. Your comments, suggestions, thoughts about future topics and guests. Email us at info@thekenharbaughshow.com and make sure to rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and back to the show.
Well, we need more rational radicals. I think your analysis of the current moment is probably right, which suggests that maybe the lasting value of the J6th committee and the work that you put into it certainly wasn't turning the 24 election in the direction of democracy. Maybe it's about that preservation of the historical record. And the jury is very much still out on that. If we in our own time cannot appreciate the threats to our own democracy, I have to believe that with enduring documents like the committee report, history will render a better verdict on not only what happened that day, but on the patriots who actually pushed back, like you and Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and the countless citizens who stood up, like Pam Hemphill. You may not know who Pam Hemphill is, but
I do.
Yeah,
I know Pam is.
Who stood on a corner in Boise, Idaho, death threat after death threat chasing her, campaigning for Harris after having spent time in jail as a J6th rioter and having become a radical rationalist herself. How do you think about the historical value of what you've done?
I'm hoping that historical value is looked at through the lens of a facts-based thing. Because what just happened, right, Ken? 128-page report from Barry Loudermilk that said that Liz Cheney, right, should be up on criminal charges. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I read that whole report, and it's mostly innuendo, right? There, if you look at the J6 report, almost 1,000 pages, the data that backed it up, pretty irrefutable. When you look at the Barry Loudermilk report, it's interesting, the cherry picking of facts. The thing that they really wanted to concentrate on was the security breakdowns. Then, of course, Trump directed them to go after Liz Cheney, which is why that report was put out there. But that's the attempt to rewrite history in a way that's sort of nonsensical, but appeals to the simplicity of people who are conspiracy theorists or bought into disinformation. So I'm looking at that. The other thing, too, is that when you look at the J6 report, we still do have, there were so many different places that the data was housed. There's still more data out there. I think January 6th needs to be an ongoing research project for counterterrorism individuals. I think we should be studying that for the next 10 years on how does a coup-like movement like that start with disinformation, with a commander-in-chief at the time who was pushing the craziest conspiracy theories, the lies that were perpetrated by news organizations like Fox News, which was obvious based on the money they had to pay out, right? We have certain news organizations that magnify crazy. And sadly, I'm starting to see that a little bit on the left now. It's almost like they want to match tit for tat based on conspiracy theories with the support of Luigi Mangione or whatever, the CEO shooting. So I'm seeing this weird, juxtaposition where history is always rewritten. The January 6th report, I think, and buddy, if I'm drinking my own bathwater, you let me know. I actually think it'll be one of the penultimate things to study in the next 10 years about what a soft coup looks like and with democratic institutions. Anybody who says that there weren't coup-like movements there are absolutely either lying, they didn't read the reports, they're cynical, or they actually are easily led and credulous as a conspiratorial type of individual. That's it. That's why when I say I've been radicalized into rationality, it's that I don't even have time to humor a counter argument with the mounds of data and analysis that's out there on what happened that day.
Well, if we know anything about coups from reading history, even recent history, is that they almost never succeed the first time. And the best predictor of a successful coup is, did it have a precursor? Did it have an almost successful coup right before it? And if that's your reading of the American moment we're in, it suggests that we're still in that phase, that we could lose the democracy if we don't take January 6th seriously. So I'm with you 100% on that.
Well, Mike Johnson in his speech as speaker said that we have to stamp out the totalitarian administrative state. That is bothersome language. And that God is behind him to do that with his prayer of Thomas Jefferson. I mean, buddy, the layers of that should be absolutely terrifying to folks.
Yeah, well, and this is the same Speaker of the House, by the way, 2 heartbeats away from the presidency, who claimed to be anointed by God as America's Moses. I mean, that is the kind of language that makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And I know I'm talking to someone steeped in religious tradition. I grew up in it. I speak the language, and this is not some distant fear of mine. I have seen that kind of fanaticism up close, and it excuses all kinds of horrors.
It does. If I may, if we do this and we hit this head on, Ken, I know you're a freaking character, right? Let's go, right? Military, both wore the uniform, a lot of pride in that. Love that you have the American flag hanging behind you. That to me is just beautiful, right? You're not going to let anybody take what you are, right? Or take those symbols for themselves. It's beautiful. When I saw the award ceremony for Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney from President Biden, I was disappointed because all 50 plus staff members should have been up there. That message should have been sent loud and clear to every single person. And I think that's the things that that bother me about half stepping into this fight. This is a national bar fight for facts and rationality and policy. And I don't need a presidential medal of freedom or anything, I don't care. I literally don't. But who I do care about are the staff members who put themselves at risk and who did most of the work are not up there receiving these medals. It should be every single staffer. Now, a lot of them might not want to because they want to remain anonymous. God bless them. Great. But there needs to be something said about those folks. Those are the people who did all the work from Tim Heaphy on down. Yeah. And Tim Heaphy just put out an incredible book, by the way, that I think people need to look at, who was the investigative lead for the entire January 6th committee. So I think part of me too is why aren't we, as a facts-based people, we got to join into the fight all the way. You can't half step into a bar fight. If they're swinging beer bottles, you're not, the Marquess of Queensberry, with that kind of stuff. So, so that's what I'm talking about when I said that we need to go all in. I just hope that there is something that happens before the 20th where all of those individuals are honored, completely. Plus the fact that who knows what's going to happen in a counter J6 investigation with those staffers and with those members. And now they're left out to dry without that, hey, these are the guys who did it. And it's the same thing, brother. It's the same thing. It's that rot that I can't get away from in the system we have now that's just not suited for this information ecosystem that we're in right now. This two-party system is just so freaking unable to maneuver through this. I really, again, another huge fear of mine is how big do these information ecosystems get? And I don't know how to fight it. I wish I could tell you. I just know I'm me and I'm going to fight it the best I can. That's why I did what I did, start my companies and do the things that I'm doing. But Buddy Ken, and that's what you're doing. That's why I guess, full circle. You're fighting. That's all we got, right? We're Americans, and that's what we do anyway.
That's what we've got. That's how we're commemorating the J6 anniversary this year. We're charging forward. One more thing, because I've heard people say, our saving grace is going to be Trump's short attention span. He's going to see this, hit piece on Liz Cheney coming out of his man on the committee, and that'll satisfy him. That might satisfy him. I don't think it will, actually, but I think the bigger problem is the people he's pulling into his government, the Kash Patels and the Millers and the Hegseths, and these folks who are going to take his supposed mandate, which doesn't exist, and use all the levers of government to attack their own enemies, who are by extension Trump's enemies. And I don't think there's a way to rein that in, at least certainly not with hope.
Yeah, well, anybody who says that's naive because he has a voracious appetite for retribution.
Yeah.
And that's just identified by the people he chooses because their loyalty, their perverse 100% loyalty is absolutely reciprocal to their competence. So there's, maybe the most incompetent, fantastical thinking, credulous, wild-eyed, off the rails appointees ever selected. And the people that you select are representative of you. So if he's picking a Kash Patel, my goodness, or a Matt Gaetz initially, or a RFK Jr., or hell, even a Tulsi Gabbard, wow, or a Kristi Noem. Come on, you have absolutely gone off the edge, and that's the indicators that intelligence operatives look at. That people who know how government works, those are the indicators that you look at. You're exactly right. Is that he has a voracious appetite for crazy, for retribution. So we'll see how that goes. And everybody's like, well, he has some good policies. Okay. All right. Kash Patel is not a good policy. No. Personnel is policy. And, I just think anybody who says that's naive, your initial statement about he'll be happy about the Liz Cheney report.
Well, Denver, great as always. We'll keep our guard up. Let's check in often. I don't know what to say. Happy J6. We haven't come up with yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, listen, we're going to continue on, and I got you, man. You're an amazing guy to be here. So as long as people like you are out there, I can, it makes me happy.
All right, we'll cover each other 6th. Good talking to Denver.
All right, buddy.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.